So we may have a view as to which capabilities we'd like to implement in what sequence, and that's great. But we also need to work out how that can be achieved within our business. And that's the point of considering and designing an adoption lifecycle. I think most people know what a business case is. A business case will have reasons, objectives, timing, funding, risks and challenges to be overcome, resource needs, etc., etc. But fewer people understand, I think, the difference between a project business case and a program business case. A project business case is very clear. We're going to do this. It's quite straightforward. But a program business case is what accompanies you on a journey, and you probably won't know what the end of the journey actually is. You'll have a view as to where you're going generally, but you'll discover what exactly you need to do along the way. And that's what a big life cycle is really. It's a program. So we need to make a business case that makes that outlines what the journey is going to be, that defines what our first objectives are, and describes where we're heading to longer term. So we can justify some funding and some resources to build some initial capability, some core enablers. If we don't have MI and data capability to begin with, then we'll need to get hold of it. We'll need some support capability to introduce it and sustain it happening. And of course, we need a clear governance framework that describes how our governance is going to operate, a key deliverable from a big solution. So we might see that as a project to generate us some core enablers. But the bulk of the work is in engaging stakeholders. It's in carrying out change and realizing benefits. And what we have to do is build success out of our first implementation, our first adoption, to enable us to get funding to continue as long as it's justifiable. So our change management and benefit realization phase, or culture delivery as we may call it, needs to be delivery. Let's help parts of the organization adopt and take it on board and transform to a new way of working. Support them in adoption so that we can increase their awareness, we can build desire with them, we can give them ability, we can give them knowledge of what's going to happen, we can reinforce that with assistance, and we then look to sustain it. We look to improve, to learn lessons, and perhaps justify the case to do a second round of enablers and a second round of adoption as it's justified. So that's the big life cycle really. A program business case, a business case for a project to build core enablers, a period of change management and benefit realization where we can see the value that we've generated and justify the next stage of core enablers and wider engagement based on that. So I think it's important to pull those two concepts together and just to reinforce that before we start working on a big solution, we need to understand which stakeholders we have, what gains are possible for which stakeholders, and to help them understand what their trigger scenario is, what's going to drive them to take some action. If we can build that consensus and pull people on board to want to do something, we can work with them to come up with a sensible way to address their opportunities and threats and agree with them what their priorities are for which capability introductions. We can then work with the organization as to how that can be achieved, whether it's a tactical small-scale solution in one area or it's a broad brush low-level approach across the organization. We need to work out how that's going to get delivered, and of course we've just described we need business case, we need to build some components and then work on culture change. And as discussed also, some of us may be tempted to try and make this big bang, to try and address all the capability to all of our people as quickly as possible. That might be tempting if we think we have severe problems, but that's not necessarily achievable or possible or sensible. So we're probably going to be looking at an incremental modular approach that enables us to keep people on board and remain successful. To wrap up today then, we've introduced what BIG is and what the core P3M Data Club is. We outlined the problems we'll be looking to address, but of course you'll have yours. We've described the components of a BIG solution so we can deliver it. We've talked about a sequence that we can describe to our business to engage them with. And we've talked about a program-based approach because we're not going to get this right first time, we're not going to get this perfect. We'll need to take a learning-based approach to delivery. But all the time, we need to focus on the outcomes and benefits. Some examples are listed here, you can read at your leisure, but again, these will be specific to you. But our ultimate goal, and this is the important message here, is that we should expect to deliver more successful strategic outcomes with greater agility, greater confidence and control. And at a high level, that is the purpose of business integrated governance, and that's why we should do it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for attending the presentation today. We've covered a lot. We've introduced you to the club and what business integrated governance is. We've tried to convey the message with a little story. We've outlined the vision components so that you can understand what you might need to build. We've introduced the concept of needing a roadmap to build the sequence with which you can deliver capability, and explain perhaps that a program is the best way to deliver adoption. There's plenty more information if you'd like it. Our club website has knowledge areas which explain all of the components in detail. The Praxis framework contains a portfolio, program and project management perspective on BIG. And we have 2 sites on LinkedIn where we collaborate and network, and we publicize news and events. Please help yourself. We're preparing this to share. It's at no cost, so please use it if you can. And of course, give us feedback and let us know what to make better if you have the time. Please do.